So let's visit the fact of the word mulatto. And when you begin to look at the word mulattoes in the Caribbean, it was actually referring to someone that was a mixture of native Indian and African blood. Then you would have the people who was coming over from Europe. And European does not mean Caucasian. Caucasian literally means from the Caucasus Mountain. And we also have to remember that the Amorites and the Hittites and the Horites are Hamitic people groups who founded Turkey and the Caucasus Mountains, as well as Indo-European languages, alongside the Philistines, who became conflated with Indo-Europeans as well. And these are Hamitic people groups. So when we began to visit my great-great-great-grandfather, who came over in 1848 at the same time that the Portuguese Sephardic Jews would be going down into Puerto Rico, we need to realize that my great-great-grandfather was coming over from Ireland. Before he was in Ireland, he was in Portugal. It's very essential to know that Portuguese are described as the blackest of the Sephardic Jews. So when he came over, he was classified as a mulatto. My great-great-grandfather was a little darker than me. He had a daughter that's the same complexion as Fat Joe. But since they were in the Americas, she was still called a black woman. But y'all will look at somebody like Fat Joe or other Hispanics with his phenotype and deem him unblack, which makes black Americans colorists. And that's just the case in point of it. When you look at Fat Joe features, his features are more African than Joe Budden. Joe Budden features are slimmer, like the Fulani, like the Ethiopian. But we deem him a Negro. Let's go based off of his features. It's possible that Joe Budden may not even be an Israelite. But you look at Joey Crack and his big old lips and his big old nose, like, what are we doing here? So then when you begin to look what my grandfather would have been called in Ireland is Muladi, Mulwadi. And this is literally applied to the first Christians, the indigenous Christians. Now, when we begin to look at the definition of first Christians, the first century Christians would be Jamesonian Ebionites, as well as the Nazarenes. These are Israelites that was in Spain and in Portugal through Muslim rule. And they ended up being called Moriscos as well, which is how Israelites end up adopting the name Moors. Because we know that the first Moors came out of Put, out of the ancient Libyans. And then in 1000 BC, when King David began to go up against the Philistines and they were pushed into Morocco and in Mauritania and Marabi, this is where you get your other branches of Moors who are Berbers. And then when you begin to look into Ishmael and them being Muslims, this is where you get Arab roots. So we have to begin to look at words for what they mean and the people groups that they were attached to. Let's continue. When you begin to look at the word Muwalad, Muwallad, excuse me, this is applicable to mixed Arab. When we begin to look at the word Arab, it literally denotes darkness or evening, as found in Genesis 1, I believe in 3 and 4. And then when you begin to also look at it, it means mingled or many. So these are already a mixed, mingled people group. But when it says mixed Arab, this is letting you know that these were the Israelites who were in Islamic rule, because it also applies to those that were not of Arab blood but born amongst the Arab. These are still Israelites. It's essential to also know that Muwalad, the one I just spelled, Muwallad, was applied to the Sicilians. Line up on line, precept on precept. And this is why your Sicilians and your Hispanics look so much alike, because Sicilians too are part of the Sephardim. We have to begin to look into, I believe it's 1200 BC, when the ancient Phoenicians went into Sicily. And we know that alongside the ancient Phoenicians, not only did you have the Philistines, described as Pel, but that would take you back to Peleg, the son of Eber, Peleg, as well as the tribe of Dan, and possibly the tribe of Asher as well, being found in Sicily before prehistory of ancient Europe, around the 6000s. But for sure, I have history on the 2500s, which would be the Naqada period of ancient Egypt. When you begin to look at the original name of Europe, it was literally Euboea, Ebonian, and this is literally the name of the Igbo, Ebonian, E-B-O, E-B-O-A-N, I believe, and this will begin to lead you to the Hebrew word Ebonium, and Ebonium means the poor. It is a plural. And when you begin to look at the ancient Igbo, they have a kingdom called Ebony, E-B-O-N-Y-I, which is Ebony, which is the poor, which is going to go back to the indigenous Christians, the Ebionites. The Igbos also have, the Akan, who Asher is seen amongst. The Akan have a kingdom called Ani, A-N-I, A-N-Y-I. And Ani is also the singular form of the poor. And Ani also goes back to the mother goddess, who is a representation of the Ruach HaKodesh in the Igbo pantheon. And Anoki in Hebrew, which is seen greatly influencing Middle Egyptian language, means I am. And when we begin to look at the Igbo, these are who are seen in Puerto Rico amongst the Taino, and to the Taino they begin to say, my people, my kindred, my kind. So when you begin to look at Puerto Ricans, by definition, they are literally mulattoes. They are a mix of the Igbo, they are a mix of the Taino, and they are a mix of the Sephardic Jews coming over from Portugal. We have to remember that the native Indians that were here first, whether they be in the Americas, South Americas, Alaska, the Caribbeans, Canada, they were here longer. So when we began to look at the transatlantic slave trade, over 90% of the indentured servants who were sold, they went into the Caribbean. They went into South America and the West Indies, so on and so forth. The free West Africans that were here already were here going back to 6000 BC from the Cushitic Assyrians, from Eber, and from Yucatan, and from Esau, and from Cush, and from Peleg, and from Uz, and from Almodad. And all of these people groups came over in 6000 BC and 3000 BC and between 1500 and 1200 BC. So although we were originally from the Arabian Peninsula and from East Africa, going into Southeast Asia and already being here as native Indians, we have to be aware of the fact that during Jim Crow, us, quote unquote, Black Americans, even though I'm a descendant of Europeans and as well as Choctaw Native Indians, my Choctaw ancestors, a lot of them on my father's side, the Burnett side, that decided to stay in the land, lost their identity, even though some of them was able to still classify, lost their identity as Native Indians. So yeah, Black Americans, not only do y'all lack culture, but y'all are also colorists. This is why the Caribbeans are closer to their culture.